First up, here we go.
Oh yeah.
Gene Harrison with BusinessWise, and been with us since 2011. So, all right, Gene. So let's talk about your story. First of all, maybe a little bit about how how selling changed for you, but when you learned Sandler concepts. So, but kind of the before and after picture of selling with Sandler, and then actually before Sandler and then Sandler.
Well, yeah. Thanks for asking, Al. My sales experience goes way back. I spent, prior to coming to BusinessWise and moving to the Atlanta area, I lived in Tampa, and I spent 26 years working with the U.S. Postal Service. 16 of those years was spent on the sales and marketing side. So I had the opportunity to work with mailers that generated over $250,000 in revenue to the post office. And it was a fun job. I had a government car, and I got to come and go as I pleased. But making cold calls was not something that we did. You would walk into a business and put your postal card down, and it was like, oh my God, what did we do now, kind of thing. It was as if the IRS had actually walked in. So it was more so selling 65 business programs that were co-op programs that we worked with mailers and reducing their overhead costs for postage. I transitioned, actually I got an early retirement, and my wife and I just transitioned ourselves up here to Atlanta. She came up here to work for another company, and so we moved up here, and I did a couple other side things before actually coming to work for BusinessWise. Got on in BusinessWise, and I was using the old, the sales mentality here was features and benefits selling. And so we would go out and we would just show our product and what all the great things it did for business development and how it would help you win more customers. Actually, I have a funny story. Actually, Al was one of my prospects, and I remember very clearly that Al and I had met at a Mexican restaurant across the street from the what is now the Infinity Center, I think. And I popped open the laptop and sold features and benefits. And actually, I do believe that Al ended up buying. And but through the course of that, Al had apparently sent out an email to Deborah, our president, and said, I'll give you a challenge if you want to take a look at Sandler. And Al had actually had BusinessWise, and then he left. And then he said, I'll take another look at BusinessWise. So what the interesting part was, whenever you challenge Deborah with a challenge, she's up for it. So lo and behold, they met, and we became clients in Sandler. Deborah started going to the Sandler classes, and she was coming back and teaching us. And I looked at her and I said, hey, lady, if you want us to learn this, you'll put us in the class, and I don't want to be a third party. Besides, I've been in sales for years, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So I got into Sandler, started getting in the groove, and it was kind of stepping out on faith and on an iceberg kind of thing. I wasn't sure if this was really for me or not, but I figured I'll just dive in. What else could I lose kind of thing. So I embraced the Sandler techniques, started playing with them, and they worked. And that's my journey from kind of features and benefit selling to Sandler, and I enjoy it. Yeah.
So I remember when you demoed for me that day, and I was a prospector. I came in to see a demo. That's why I was there. And yep. I didn't care. I didn't necessarily want you to probe for pain, and ask about my budget. I just wanted to see the demo, right? That's what prospects do. And so that was kind of interesting how not only did you follow my system, you were actually taking my system from the beginning, back in those days. And but you had come highly recommended. BusinessWise had come highly recommended. I'd already decided I was going to buy anyway. All right, so Let's go to the BAT triangle, Gene. So tell us your favorite Sandler concept in the behavior part of the triangle.
You know, one of the I think they're all equally favorites for me, but I think the one that probably steps out or tops out to the best is behavior. And you know, setting goals, using your cookbook as a roadmap to get to where you need to be. That's behavior, and setting those behavior standards is probably the top part of the BAT for me. Attitude, I'm always checking in with attitude, and you know, having the right mindset. It's not easy, and particularly these days, it's not easy. And then you know, in techniques, putting those techniques to place and learning them and reinforcing them has been important for me. The negative reversing, using the dummy curve. So all of those pieces of the BAT are important, but I think that behavior, doing the behaviors gets me to where I need to be. I don't know that. I know that as a fact. I don't believe it. I know it. So, yeah, and sticking to the cookbook, adjusting that cookbook as you go along as well.
Now, I don't remember, Gene, but before you had Sandler training, did you set goals? Were you a goal setter?
No, I didn't. I just flew by the seat of my pants.
So once you had Sandler training, you started setting goals and then making action plans, including your cookbook.
Exactly. And I have seen the financial reward from it as well.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what it's about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. How about some favorite Sandler rules, Gene? You got any favorite Sandler rules?
There's 3 of them that I really like, and it's one that I have had a hard time learning, and I know that Al knows this as well. Money does grow on trees, referral trees, and asking for referrals and getting for referrals. It's been a tough mindset for me, and the fact that BusinessWise has been around 40 years, so a lot of people have either heard or know of us. So it comes easy. It's a lot of people call in and say, hey, I heard of BusinessWise, or referrals. I don't necessarily always have to ask for them because they come easy, being a 40-year-old company and the word on the street about who we are and what we do. So, you know, money does grow on trees. I am doing much better, and it's part of my cookbook to ask and give referrals. The other one is, you know, there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople. It is so refreshing when I go out on a sales call or today do a virtual meeting to sit back and afterwards kind of debrief myself on what I did right, what worked, what didn't work, and what could I do better. It's a continuing learning process, and the rule of there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople helps me to identify those spots where I might have missed, cued, or, you know, man, if I'd have only asked this kind of question. So that's one of the other favorite ones. And then answer every question with a question. Perfect. Are you reversing? Are you using negative reverses? So answer every question with a question. I keep that top of mind as well. Those are probably my 3 favorite Sandler rules.
Those are really good ones. I love the second one as well. There are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople. It really goes along with one of the pre-work videos. Actually, it was a podcast that we assigned for this week, which is Take Responsibility. Actually, the podcast was about the 3 rules for success, one of which is take responsibility. And that's really what that rule is about, is to realize that if you blame the prospect for what went wrong, you'll never be able to figure out how to get better. And I think your answer about, or your what you shared about behavior and then what you shared about technique also goes along with this too, because if you're talking about your favorite techniques being reversing, negative reversing, which David Sandler called fuel for your submarine, you know, if you're focusing on getting better, most people think about the submarine. They think about buying, building rapport, upfront contracts, paying, but it's equally important, and maybe sometimes more important, is knowing when and how to reverse, how to use that dummy curve stuff. So I appreciate you sharing about that. Gene, you've been selling a long time, and you've been in Sandler now for like 10 years. So tell us, do you have a favorite selling story to share with us?
Oh gosh, there's so many out there. I'll share those one briefly with you. I had the opportunity to meet with a company over in Tucker that does mobile shredding. I think I may have shared this one before for those of you that may not have heard it. I walked in and had met with the owner. His wife was doing some business development for him, and consequently, we had the conversation. Obviously, he was the decision maker. He had a lot of pain, had pain everywhere. Dug into budget, and budget was a little issue for him. There was some resistance and some pushback there. And so, you know, throughout the conversation, I totally drilled back on some of the pain that was going on and what it was costing him and what was he going to do if he didn't do anything, kind of thing. So when it was all said and done, the guy looked at me and he said, kind of give me a ballpark figure of what that budget looks like. And when I told him he was looking at an entry point of somewhere around $5,000, I think he, if I recall, he kind of grasped his chest and I thought he was going to fall out. He said, do you know that I can get your competition for about a third of the cost? And my question to him was, well, why do you think that is? And he basically told me, he said, I don't know. He said, to me, business data is business data. And so I kind of decided that he didn't pass that gate, but he had some issues on the other two. So I looked at him and I told him, I said, Ian, you know, clearly it doesn't sound like we're going to do business today because of budget. Is that correct? And he said, yeah. He goes, I just don't have budget. And I said, well, my suggestion, if I could take my sales hat off for a moment and be more of a consultant, my suggestion to you would be to go ahead and embrace the competition. The only question I ask is, can I re-engage you in 9 months to see how that business decision went? He said, absolutely. Let's continue the conversation 9 months out, and I can assure you that I will know better how that went. 7 months later, my phone rang, and it was Ian on the phone. He said, hey, Gene, the reputation of my company is being tarnished. And I said, wow, what happened? I said, what's going on, Ian? And he said, well, you know, I took your advice. He said, I really went with what you said and decided to go ahead with the competition. And he goes, not good. I said, well, tell me why. And he said, well, I picked up the phone, and he goes, out of 10 calls I make, 5 of those numbers are disconnected. And I went, wow, what is that costing you? And he goes, oh, no, it gets worse. He said, he said, I can connect with somebody, and he goes, and usually when I connect with the company, that person hasn't been there in several years. Do you know what the feeling it is and what my reputation is when I'm not calling on the decision makers or even knowing who to ask for? He goes, my reputation is being tarnished. He said, we need to reconvene. And I said, Ian, I'm happy to have that conversation, but I must warn you, my costs haven't changed. The investment for BusinessWise hasn't changed. And he simply said at that point, I realize the cost of bad data. Let's have a conversation and meet again. And I said, what are you hoping to gain from the conversation? And he goes, I want to reconnect. I want to find out what the pricing is. He goes, I need to make a decision on doing something. And I said, and then I set the appointment and did I set the appointment for him. We went out and he became a client. And through that period, they added 2 more trucks because of their business development efforts. So interesting point. That was one of my favorite ones. I could tell stories all day long.
It's a good story. And you used a couple reverses there where most people would have piled on features and benefits, or
Exactly.
bash the competition. But you didn't do that. You let him bash the competition and
Yes.
turn that into pain, and that's awesome. Gene, one more question for you real quick. You've been in Sandler for 10 years. Why are you still in Sandler?
I don't know. I am a big person of continuous improvement. I am always learning, and it's refreshing to go to Sandler. And I can't say that I know this stuff forwards and backwards because I don't. But I will say it's always refreshing to hear something that either Al says or the content of the lesson that day brings forth. It turns on a light bulb and makes me either remember it or it's something that I've missed all along and go, dang, why aren't you doing that? So I'm a continuous learner. I think we learn by repetition, repetition, and I know that repetition is how I learn, because when I come in and I hear something, I may not have been doing it, or I have kind of fallen off the wagon on it. So it's continuous improvement that I'm all for.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing.